Yes, everybody! You know the drill. We've started this podcast to help anyone who's remotely interested in trapping and neutering animals. We're the help we didn't receive when we first wanted to get involved, and we want to be your new besties in the TNR world. I am Alex, one of your hosts for this ride, and I'm so grateful to have Adelle by my side.
Hey, Alex. Today we have a really good friend on the podcast. Everybody meet Amber. Amber and Alex run Saaving Lives with 2 A's. And it's a TNR-focused organization that operates worldwide. Amber manages the Greece side of things. And originally from the UK, Amber moved to Greece about 5 years ago to improve animal welfare standards and promote education on humane cat population control. So she's working on targeted sterilization efforts and community engagement. And her goal is to create lasting change for stray animals.
Welcome, Amber.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yay! So
It's so cool to see you two together again.
Yeah, I know.
Been a while.
And really far apart from each other now.
Like
Geographically,
8,000
yes.
kilometers. Yeah. Yeah. So we like to ask our guest just a question to just, like get into the groove, start the conversation. So, Amber, when did you first start being vegan / caring about animal rights? Like, when was that and why?
Well, I suppose caring about animal rights and then actually becoming vegan were 2 different monumental moments in my life. But I have one very distinct memory of being sat outside a McDonald's at a petrol station, actually, in England. And I was just there, and I thought I was this animal lover. I had cats, I had dogs. My family was always rescuing animals. And I was sat outside McDonald's just eating my cheeseburger, as you do. And one of the big lorries pulled up to the petrol station, and it had all of the I can't remember if it was pigs or cows or some kind of livestock in the back of this lorry. And I just remember seeing all of their little faces, poking through the grills, most likely on their way to a slaughterhouse. And I wanted to be vegetarian for a while at that point, but was in a toxic relationship. It was not allowing that, let's say. But I remember just seeing these little faces poking through, and at that moment I was like, there is absolutely no way I can continue eating animals. So that was probably probably longer, maybe 9 or 10 years ago now, that I made the transition to vegetarian then, and then very quickly within that year realized that it needed to be further than being a vegetarian. And that's when the veganism and animal rights sort of started to play a more significant role in my life.
And you studied also something related to animal rights, or at least animal well-being, right?
Yeah, so I've always studied a variety of different animal related things, from dog behavior, animal welfare and stuff like that. But my master's degree was in animal behavior and welfare. And it was really the welfare side of things that sparked my interest, let's say. So we did a lot of assessments on slaughterhouses and stuff like that, and we had to go to these kind of places and do an animal welfare assessment. And most of the people on my course were agricultural students, so most people had come from a farming background and were very quick to justify these kind of practices. And on the whole course, there was only me and 2 other people that were coming at it from an animal rights perspective. And even though we'd seen the same thing, we were analysing the same behaviour, the same place, you could see the results at the end of it were just there was so much bias there due to obviously their upbringing and views of trying to justify it. So that was really interesting to see the difference there, just on people's perspective rather than the facts that they have right in front of them.
Yeah, that's Adelle, I have a question because I never asked you. When did you first get into animal rights?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember how many years it's been now. But it was definitely back when I was still in the States, and at the time I was surrounded by all these awesome sanctuaries. So I remember when I was starting to think about all of this, I just had this need to go spend time at sanctuaries, and that obviously quickly solidifies the decision, doesn't it? You get to see the animals up close. And I think there might be some interesting overlaps between what you've just described, Amber, and what we're all doing now, focusing on population control, and maybe cultural and societal attitudes towards the kind of action you're taking to support the animals that you care about. So maybe we'll dive into that a little bit later on.
Yeah. So the topic today that we really want to talk about is so Amber and I, we run Saving Lives, which first started in a small town in Greece, about an hour away from Athens. And Adelle has been based in Athens for a few years now, I think 2 years, if I'm right. And she focuses her TNR efforts in Athens, which is a big city compared to our small, tiny little town in Greece. And so we really want to show the differences in like resources and, how we do it. What are the differences? So we're just going to take a quick break and then we'll be back with that.
So, of course, what gave you the inspiration to start your own TNR-focused organization? How did you get into all of this mess?
It's a good question. Like I previously said, I've always been like an animal person, studied animals, rescued animals, and obviously the goal was always to have my own animal-based organization, but I didn't realize it was going to be like a TNR-focused one until I was helping another shelter here in Greece for a couple of years, which is where me and Alex met. And the shelter where we were working was very much a rescue-based organization. So we were constantly rescuing kittens from the streets and having to bottle feed them and raise them, and rescuing cats that had been hit by a car or been abused. And we were constantly facing all of these issues and taking in all of these cats, but they weren't focusing on the solution, which we quickly realized was TNR. We needed to stop the population from spreading so much, because you can rescue and rescue and rescue, but you're going to be rescuing for forever. So it was a couple of years ago, I think me and Alex had the realization together that rescuing isn't enough. We need to get to the root cause of the problem, and we need to start sterilizing, like mass population sterilizing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that anybody who visits Greece comes face to face with very quickly, right? Just the sheer amount of animals that live on the street. It's really interesting. I've heard quite a few stories of people who have started in rescue, just like you described, and particularly in the majority of the world, in the global south, there simply are not the capabilities and resources to do the amount of rescue that you need for all the animals around you. And so it logically follows, just as you explained, we then focus more so on the root of the problem, which is this unmanageable, uncared for population. Do you want to share a little bit about that and what you guys have set out to do to change capacities and not just neuter cats? Because you've done quite a lot of interesting initiatives. You've connected with local volunteers. You've brought really good quality trapping equipment. You've made a trap lending program. You've created a lot of systems that help a lot more people get involved in this.
Yeah, I think like you just said, you'll never be able to rescue the amount of animals that need rescuing. And I think that's the same as sterilizing. There's no way that we can sterilize the amount of cats that need sterilizing, which is why we've tried to incorporate the community as much as possible, with lending traps to people, providing funding to people, educating people. Because, as one or two people, we can only trap so many. But if everybody in the community, that we'll probably speak later, the differences between our small town versus Athens. But, we know the locals here, we know people around. So it's an easier network in order to try and get people on board and do this together as a group in order to sterilize, as many as possible.
Amber, would you say that most of our volunteers are like the people we work with in our little town I'll call it Porto Rafti, so also people know where we're based. Do you think it's mostly locals, so like Greek people, or is it mostly foreigners?
I would say in terms of trapping and any like TNR based activities, it would mainly be internationals. But don't get me wrong, the local feeders and stuff like that who are also part of the team, we also rely on them a lot in terms of looking after the animals and highlighting any issues to us. I would say a good percentage of them are locals. We, like the older Greek cat ladies. We do definitely have some locals on board as well, but in terms of having the vision that we have with sterilization, this comes from the internationals from our experience.
And our town is not big, but there is an actual quite big community of internationals there because it's like by the sea and all of that. So a lot of people from other countries come and build houses here. But one thing I want to say is that when we've been trapping cats on the streets, we've never had any international raise their voices or yell at us or, just being really angry that we're sterilizing cats. We've had international just wondering like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what is that? And we explain it. But come we've came across a couple of great people that have
Yeah.
been a bit angry with us, and we've received
Negativity always comes from like the locals.
yeah, and I don't know what is that. Is that because we're not educated the same way? Is that because Greek people have been raised around cats their whole lives? Stray cats is just, like they're just so used to it, and maybe people from France and from Germany or from England, they're just not used to it that way, and they've learned about sterilization for so long that they just don't see it the same way. But we've come across a few locals that were very angry with us, saying that we were playing gods or that, we were like, they were going to sue us because we're sterilizing cats. And I don't know if it's because it's a small town, so Adele, like, jump in there. Like, how is it in Athens? Because Athens is a capital, so people are like, they're just, maybe the education is different.
I've thought about it a lot actually, especially since the most recent video that we shared on the Saaving Lives page with that encounter that one of our volunteers, Natasha, had to deal with. And I definitely think part of it comes from their underlying education and their ego. I think we had some instances, Alex, when we were releasing cats and people would come over and they're instantly hostile, they're instantly angry because they think that we're dumping cats there. They just see people coming and releasing cats at the bins, in the field, wherever we are. So they instantly come with hostility because they think that we're releasing cats there. And then when we try to educate them and we're like, we've sterilized them, we're bringing them back, this is their home, but like they'll be healthy now, the population is under control. They can't let their ego go. They still have to prove, and they will like try and pick any little argument possible rather than being like, oh, okay, that's great. Sorry, I was wrong. Thank you for your work. They instantly start picking like random things. I'm going to sue you. You're in our country. You're playing God. And that's when all these crazy excuses come, because I feel like they don't have the mental and emotional ability just to say like, oh, I'm sorry that I was wrong. So I think that definitely is one part of it. And then the other part is I think that they're used to it. It's normal for them to just have all these stray animals around. It's the same with having like litter on the streets. From my experience, Greece is a very dirty country in terms of like the garbage that's all over the place. But for them, that's normal. Which is why like the internationals, when we come, we're not used to seeing like cats all over the streets and McDonald's cups all over the roads and stuff like that. So we have like a different stance on it.
Yeah, I think something interesting that you guys highlighted in that video you shared, which was quite an interesting, like, accidental moment that she captured, wasn't it? And she is also international, right? So she's not local. She was on her own and she was just filming herself releasing these cats after they had been neutered. And this person randomly stopped and she went over and she tried to explain what she was doing. And it clearly didn't matter what she said. He was just angry. And that's something that I've noticed in most places I've been, whether it was Montenegro or Bosnia or not so much Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia, you can share your experience from when you've been there if you want, but people sort of tend to more just leave you on your own if you just like look like this, crazy international running around helping animals. But in the Balkans in particular, people are upset for a myriad of reasons, and it doesn't seem, to your point, to be backed by some rigid stance. They're just generally unhappy and concerned. And so sometimes trying to explain what we're doing doesn't help. And I have experienced that in Athens as well. One thing that I've tried to implement when I'm out in the field is ensuring that I'm not alone. So even if that's someone who's just helping drive the cats to the vet or some small piece, I always try to be with someone who speaks the local language, because then at least I can continue focusing on the individual animal. The person who's concerned or angry has someone they can speak to in their local language. And I've found that quite often helps in these cases. So that might be something to think about for anybody who's going out into the field, even though a lot of us do it on our own because we have to. There are some small things that we can do to perhaps increase our likelihood of not having those interactions be so hostile. Maybe it's having like a printed leaflet on who we are and what we're doing, or why sterilization is important. It could even be some kind of certificate that shows you're from an organization and the municipality approves of what you're doing. Maybe it's the printed law, because in Greece we are all allowed to feed, sterilize, etc., and the government is actually obligated to do that. And making sure somebody always knows where you are, where you're going to visit, maybe have your location services on, have somebody you could call from nearby. So these are things that we can kind of think about when we know we're going to face hostility in the field. And it's really cool that you guys captured that moment to demonstrate just what that looks like. What actually resulted from that situation, Amber and Alex? Like, did the guys just eventually leave her alone? Like, how was she after? Was she okay? Did she call you like, guess what just happened? Or did she just kind of deal with it on her own?
She just kind of dealt with it and then sent us the video afterwards and was like, you'll never guess what just happened. Almost like as a joke. Like, she was so shocked. She was so confused that she like had to deal with that kind of interaction. But nothing came of it, whether he contacted the council or the municipality and reported her plates like he said he would, or whether he just left it. We don't know what happened on his side, but from our side, there's been zero repercussions or anything that has come of that. But we've had it a couple of times, haven't we, Alex, with people taking like the number plate and stuff, and I'm going to report you, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Like what? Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. And in that situation, like we said, because of the anger in them, a lot of the time explaining the situation, you're not gonna get anywhere. So you just have to accept that they will do whatever they feel they need to do and leave them to it.
Adelle, do you get any help, or do you have any connection with the municipality of Athens? Like, how do they act with you sterilizing cats? And I know there's a lot of organizations in Athens that do a lot of work, so I know you're not the only one. But how does the municipality act around you guys?
So it's a good point, and I think a lot of us, whether we're individuals or organizations, have quite an unpleasant view of the municipality, surely out of frustration of, as we mentioned, this support they are obligated to provide and are perhaps unable to for a myriad of reasons. But what results is all of us wanting to help, unable to help these animals in the capacities that we want. So I think for a lot of us, there might be hesitancy to have any kind of connection to local municipalities. As individuals, I don't know what resources there are, but if we acknowledge that this could be something helpful to have some form of positive relationship and have them know who we are, especially if we are working as a volunteer or otherwise with a local registered organization or just an organization in general, they're not necessarily going to provide support, but you can at least say, they know what I'm doing. It's okay. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Like, I've had security guards from, let's say, businesses or government bodies who really should know the law call the police and have us wait there to check our papers from the municipality and run our plates, which were obviously all like in check. And sure, it was a waste of 30 minutes, but it was good to have that piece of paper, that certificate with my name on it, with the organization I was working for, to just give me some peace of mind that everything's going to be fine. They're just going to come and check, and then I'll be on my way. All that happens is I wasted my time a little bit. But it might be worthwhile, therefore, to think about having some relationship with local organizations, local municipality, no matter what our preconceptions might be. We don't have to be besties, but there can be some collaboration that overall helps achieve the goal, which is being able to help cats.
Yeah. And talking about relationships with, municipality, I also want to talk about relationships with vets, which I think is really important. And I think it's very different when you're based in Athens, whereas when you're based in a small town, because Amber and I, it's a small town. There's not that many vets. I think there's 2 in our town, and you don't have a lot of choices. If the vets doesn't do what you want them to do, if the relationship is not great, then you don't have any other options. So, and I know in Athens, I don't even know how many you guys have, at least 100. But we don't. So, yeah, I just want to talk about that because Amber and I have come across a few difficulties with some vets. Well, I think the first vet we used was a man. And so I think there was a lot of ego playing in the field. Well, Amber, you can help me there. But yeah, I think he was just trying all the time to mansplain everything to us, right?
No matter what happened, it was, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm right, you're wrong. Like, no matter what the situation was. And my previous job before moving to Greece was I worked in a vet's. So I'm not qualified in the field, but I had a good amount of knowledge in terms of like the medications that we should be using for like anesthetics and pain relief and stuff like that. And every time I tried to share like any experience or, like previously like we did it like this and like offer any suggestions, we were like completely shot down immediately. So at that time, our only option was to accept, really, because we didn't have any other options of other vets to use. So we just had to accept that this is the way it was here, and like we have no other options. So we continued sterilizing there. And how many cats did we sterilize? Over 500.
Yeah, over 500. But it was difficult because even sometimes like we would catch sick cats and would tell him like, before you sterilize them, please check them, like, do like a full health check because we're not sure they're healthy enough to be sterilized. And he would just give them back to us being like, yeah, we've checked, they're not healthy. Just whatever, do whatever with them. And I'm like, but when did you check? There's still the cable ties around the carrier. You did not even open the carrier. And these cats were super friendly, I remember. And they didn't even check them, but they made us believe, no, we checked them. Like,
so lazy with so many things, like any excuse they could find to not check the animal, to not do the work. They were super lazy. They just wanted the money at the end of it, basically. So we used them for about a year until we found an alternative option, which again, we still have downsides to, but in general, I find the situation we have now is significantly better, although there's always room for improvement, like you said, because we don't have many other options. Sometimes it does, and we should never have to like accept these circumstances if they're not what we agree with. But like, it's impossible to be driving to and from Athens every day with 5-10 cats.
Yeah, and so the vet we use now, we have put some compromise. We know that they will do the sterilization, but we also know that if the problem is bigger, we're not going to them. We will drive an hour to see a specialist or another vet that will be more thorough. So it's a lot to take into account when you're doing TNR is what kind of vets do you have around you and how much can they do for you?
Yeah, I find for us anyway, we can't find one vet that can do everything. It's always like one vet can do TNR, one vet can do eye problems, one vet can do respiratory problems, which causes a lot of issues for us. I don't know, in Athens, do you have like maybe bigger practices that have multiple vets on site so you have a better experience, Adele?
So what I've realized over the past few years is we do generally hope that the one or two vets that we found to trust, because yes, we may have access to lots, but as you said, not all clinics suits all of our needs and all of them have different backgrounds and motivations. So yes, like there is this desire to have this one vet clinic who we really like, that vet specifically is really compassionate towards, especially free roaming cats, and really wants to help us. But I've come to realize it's kind of the same with human medical care, right? Like we do go to different people for different things. Not everyone can be a specialist in everything. I wouldn't go to my gynecologist to fix my eye. So I've become a little bit more open to acknowledging that different vets have different strengths and different focuses. And yes, it is frustrating to have to drive a really large distance. And actually, I might not have a choice, to your point. Like, Porterofty is kind of like in the Athens umbrella, right? But it is quite far away, as you pointed out. And similarly, with a lot of islands, there just aren't that many choices. I've been to your guys' area, to Paros, to Sfieros, to Lefkava, and it's all the same. It's one or two or three clinics. They're set in their ways. They've been doing this for a long time. They all have their different motivations and biases, and it's always a huge struggle. But what I like about what you said, Alex, is you talked about a plan that you now have based on what you've learned, right? So you've discussed what your protocol is going to be when you come across a cat who has extra needs, and you've already thought, this is what we'll do in the situation. And when we're facing these challenges, especially around like patient advocacy and getting the care that they truly need, having this kind of plan to know what to expect and how to act can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I think when the resources are limited, just see what you have around you and how you can work with what you have, because at the end of the day, that's all you can do for the animals.
And if I could just build on something you guys were talking about earlier, and Amber, you were saying how you have a background in vet clinics. I think like none of us got into this thinking, I'm going to do all of this rescue work, and also I'm going to become really well versed in the world of animal veterinary care. It's kind of become out of necessity that we've learned all the things we have, like you said, about drug protocols, about analgesia, about, recovery and specific health conditions. Like there are all these Facebook groups for what to do. My cat has FIP, etc. And we've kind of had to dive deeper into becoming really strong patient advocates where we have this breadth of information. We're joining webinars, we're doing these certifications to learn everything we can in order to try to make the best choices for our patients. And perhaps it's not something that people in the global north are more used to. Like maybe you can share in France, you would go to the vet and you would just kind of listen to what they say. And obviously not every vet clinic is, the expert on everything. And I have people who go to their vets in France and then choose a different one because they didn't like their, diagnosis or treatment plan or whatever. But you just don't approach it in the same way as feeling you have to learn everything. So it is a lot. And I understand why a lot of people in rescue or population management don't want to have to learn everything. but actually the consequences are quite dire. It's them not receiving proper pain relief. It's a procedure being unnecessary. It's recovery going wrong. So, yeah, that's it. It's important.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, because from our experience, we've also had that a lot, haven't we, where we have had to do a lot of background research ourselves and present that to the vets. Okay, like, we've done this, like, I've had 1,000 cats where you've told me it's going to die of FIP, and actually, like, these are the steps that we need to take and stuff like that. So it's super important, I think, for any field like this, but especially when these innocent lives are dependent on us, and we're putting ourselves forward as somebody that's going to help them to be as educated as we possibly can be, to do the best job that we can do. And maybe it's not always perfect, but I think educating ourselves on all of the different things that we can do to help them
will also help us make the right decision, right? Because the amount of time vets have been like, oh, you should just put that cat to sleep. And we're like, well, wait, sure? I don't think so. And then the cat is now completely thriving. So it's also, like, the more educated you are, the more you can make the right decision about an animal's life. So
the confidence in our decision making as well, because like you said, Adele, sometimes you will just go to the vets and you agree with what they say because they're the professional, and you feel like you don't know anything, so you'll just do what they say. But having the confidence in ourselves and our knowledge and our work to actually say, like, I disagree with that, and I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to help this animal and to save their life. And the results that we have seen, the success stories that we have from doing that, to think that the vet would have just put them to sleep and that was it, is amazing to see the amount of animals' lives that we've actually changed from having confidence in our knowledge and our decision making.
Definitely. I mean, you guys have overseen some pretty remarkable recoveries, like unimaginable recoveries. And that's because you went the extra mile to say, no, actually, I think we can do better. And it is really frustrating for all the reasons you spelled out before. You have this person saying, I have this experience and you're younger than me, or you're a woman, or you're, a foreigner. Like, you don't know for all of these reasons. Why aren't you listening to me? To go up against that, it's stressful. And I've seen quite a few situations where someone has gone in with good intentions trying to advocate on behalf of their patient, but the vet handling that case is just diminishing their attempts to try to advocate for that animal. It's definitely really frustrating. I don't know if it's something that you guys do in your team, but to have sort of like a general understanding of certain procedures that you're okay with or not. So, for example, are you okay with a vet doing multiple surgeries at once? So let's say you're taking an animal in for a spay and it turns out they have a hernia, and the vet comes to you and says, oh, I don't think we should do both at once, or I don't think we should do anything at all. Maybe just having a general idea of how to handle these kind of basic situations, which may sound extreme, but actually we encounter quite a lot of extreme things in the field because we're dealing with cats who live outdoor and they have a lot of crazy stuff going on. So having some rough idea of how to handle certain things. Some things may be more prevalent in other places, like this cat has chronic diarrhea. Are we just going to chalk that up to them being an outdoor cat, or are we going to ask our vet, who hasn't suggested it, to do some basic blood and fecal tests? Can we test for Giardia parvo coronavirus? That's a triple snap test. That's a really cheap, quick thing that the vet can do, that they shouldn't fight us on, that could quickly give us an answer to something that could be life-changing. I've seen a cat with chronic diarrhea for a year. The vet refused to test for Giardia. They wouldn't do a poop sample at all. And then we went to a different vet, who is incredible. And the first thing they did was test for Giardia. And guess what? It was Giardia. And unfortunately, that had been going on so long that the cat had to be euthanized. That's the difference between knowing what to ask for, knowing what to advocate for versus not. And we're in this really frustrating situation. Right, exactly. It's such a simple fix.
Yeah. literally life-changing.
Yeah, so having some kind of general plan in place of things we feel comfortable asking for might be helpful if we discuss those things together ahead of time.
And we're back with Amber, my partner in crime in Saving Lives. So Amber and I have been trapping for a while now, and I think this is good to just see how do we go out and trap, like how do we get ready for it? And maybe compare it to Adelle's, who lives in a city where maybe she doesn't use a car. We have to use a car because we live in a small town. So a few differences, I'm sure. So Amber, do you want to walk us through how do we get ready when we go trapping? And what kind of equipment do we use?
Yeah, so we definitely have our routine, let's say. I think we could both do it blindfolded in the dark. It's like on autopilot now. Obviously the good quality traps that we're using to make sure that they are secure and safe for the cats. I think having good quality equipment is super important. So high quality, sturdy traps.
Yeah, the ones we're using are the Tomahawk ones. They are a Minnesota-based company, I believe. And yeah, their trap are really, really amazing. We really, really like them. I think they're our favorite.
Absolutely. And everybody in the town that we are like lending these traps to, these are the ones that everybody wants. So they're in high demand here. So yeah, our traps, again, good quality carriers. If we're having to transfer cats from traps into carriers, we want to make that as easy and as stress-free as possible. We don't want any escapees after they've just been trapped. It needs to be good, sturdy equipment. High value food. You're not going to trap these stray kitties without some high value food. And I think one of the essentials actually that might be like forgotten about sometimes is also some cheap food to distract the rest of the cats. Because there's always one cat that you want and they're getting all of the good stuff, but you have like 10 cats like circling around who are either already sterilized or can't be sterilized right now for whatever reason. Maybe they're kittens, maybe they're too young. So just having like a bunch of random food that you can just kind of like throw down to distract the other cats, I think, especially if you're trapping alone. Like for me, this is like the number one go-to thing that somehow I seem to forget a lot of the time. But when I have it, I'm like, yes, now my life is so much easier. Cable ties, obviously, whatever they're in, whether they're staying in the trap or being transferred to the carrier, like we said before, they need to be secure. Wee pads to put inside the equipment that we're using, and covers. As soon as the cat goes in the trap, they're covered. As soon as they're transferred into a carrier, if that's what we're doing, they're covered. Once they're in the car waiting to be transported, they're covered. And this is one of the most essential things, obviously, to reduce their stress and keep them as comfortable as possible during this time. So unlimited amounts of towels and blankets and any form of fabric that you can find to cover these little babies.
Yeah. And would you say most cats we come across are friendly, like we can trap them sometimes without a trap, or would you say most of them are very feral?
I would say most of them we use the trap for. But obviously there are always, I would think maybe like 70% trap, 30% just with the carrier, but it depends on the colony. Some of them are super friendly. And if they're used to having feeders around, especially like in the summer months, if they're used to having a lot of tourists around, people are feeding them fish, they're going to the tavernas. These are super sociable cats that are very easy just to go like walk straight into the carrier, just have some pets, a little cuddle here and there. And it's pretty stress-free for them. But then especially like now in the winter months where the human population here is significantly lower, the cats do tend to be a little bit more, scared. So I think the traps in that situation just make it so much more of a streamlined, easy process for us. We set the traps up, we put the food in and the cat's in, like bam, 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 we can get, if we're lucky, like 10 cats on the go. I mean, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 1. You never know how it's going to get.
Would you say we use the drop-down trap a lot? I wouldn't say that. I would say we, mostly use the Tomahawk, but I don't.
Yep.
I think I've used it once, maybe the drop-down trap.
It's nice to have, but I don't think, we don't use it that much. But there'll be them times where we don't take it out. And as soon as we get there, we're like, oh, it would be so good if we had the drop down trap right now. And it's the one thing that we left at home. So always good to have in the car, because even if you're not using it as like a drop down trap, you can just open the door and the cat will walk in anyway. So it's still a secure place for a cat to be transported to the vet in.
Adele, would you say that the cats you trap in Athens are mostly feral or friendly-ish?
I think due to it being an urban environment, fast-paced, lots of stuff going on all the time, they're definitely leaning towards phobic and feral. And for that reason, most of the time I'm using the tomahawk drop trap. So when you say drop down, do you mean the really big one? Or do you mean the individual dropper?
The individual ones are the ones that we have.
Okay. So I'd say 75% to 80% of the time I'm using the tomahawk drop trap, because I have this cat who has a moment to come out the front of an abandoned building before a car passes and she runs back inside. Therefore, using like an automatic box trap is not going to be it's not going to be enough time for them to trap themselves. The dropper I use quite frequently as well, for cats that are just a bit like aloof, like not paying as much attention to me. If I can get 2 seconds where they're not looking at me, it's fine. But yeah, most of the time it's the really big tomahawk.
One thing that you just mentioned, Adele, that I thought was really interesting to touch on is the abandoned buildings that you're trapping in, because the landscape between Athens and Portarafti is totally different. You're working in very urban areas. There's a lot of cars, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of buildings, and we are literally doing field work in the fields. It's very rural. We're just on like dirt traps. They're all living in hedges and stuff like that. So I can't imagine like how complex it is for you to be restricted from going into buildings, for example, if you know that there's many cats in there and you physically can't get access. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's definitely a chaotic, high stress environment. So some of the things that have helped are either going really early in the morning or later in the evening. Also, something that's absolutely saved us is having a relationship with the cat's feeder, so that I don't, as this random strange person, don't have to be the one to convince them to come out of this building, which keeps them safe from the chaos of Athens. It makes sense why they live in there. It's a blessing and a curse, because they're safe, but I can't get to them to neuter them. So having the feeder have a relationship with them helps draw them out. One thing that I found that helps a lot is, as you said, high value food, but I take a mixture of all the high value foods that I can think of. So some smelly like fish based can of cat food, and then I mix that with tuna, and then I mix that with sardines. So I make like a really disgusting cocktail of something that is for sure going to draw them out. But yeah, a lot of the times, like, we're completely dependent on them being willing to come out. I think that's quite an interesting part of all of this. Is some people view it as, I'm going to go out and I'm going to grab this cat because I've decided today. But particularly because of urban trapping, I've realized they're in control. Like, I have to demonstrate to them they can trust me to come out and eat from my trap. And then obviously I unfortunately break that trust and take them to the vet to try to save their life. But it showed me that my trapping approach should really be catering to their needs, to be aware of their behavior and what might be suitable for them. What conditions do they want to come out and come into my not scary at all trap? Some things that I found really helpful when trapping is labeling, and it might be a little bit less crucial for you guys. Maybe you're going to like 1 or 2 spots in a day and you're really familiar with the spot, which is more so a feature of being on islands. But when I'm in Athens, I might be going to like 5 or 6 or 7 spots within a trapping session, and they might all be like a few blocks from each other. So I always keep a system of labeling with me so that I'm identifying exactly where they come from. Another thing that I do to have some biosecurity measure in place is some kind of like plastic covering for whether I'm calling a taxi or a friend is kindly helping drive the cats to the vet. I always have some plastic sheeting to go underneath. You tend to be able to convince the taxi driver to take your 8 screaming cats more easily if he thinks his car is not going to get messed up. And then I also make sure that I'm always using gloves. Even if I'm not afraid of getting my hands dirty, it's just going to be an extra barrier for whether I'm stroking a friendly cat or crawling around on the ground, looking underneath the car. It's just going to be an extra barrier to kind of keep everything a little bit more safe and myself safe. And the zip ties being reusable. That's super helpful. And for anybody who likes eco measures and doesn't want to create all this waste, that's been something that's been really fast and easy to implement and has saved us some money on trapping supplies.
Yeah, such a good point, because the cable ties are absolutely essential. So the reusable ones, cost effective and better for the environment. It's a win-win.
I've seen you guys out trapping in the field, and it was an absolute pleasure to see you working together. Like your approach was really considerate, and you gave cats their space and time, and it was just really nice to see like people working really well together and having like a gentle, stress-free approach to trapping.
Yay, thank you. And we're running out of time and we need to wrap it up. So Amber, do you have any advice for anybody trying to trap, whether it's in Porto Lafti, whether it's on a small Greek island, whether it's in the middle of nowhere? Any advice for them?
I think I actually really like what Adele just said. Sorry, Adele, to like steal your advice. But
Go
you
on.
mentioned about the cats always being in control, and I think that is so important, that just to respect their space and not rush them, because the more panicked and stressed and rushed you are, like your trapping is going to be unsuccessful. You just need to respect how stressful this is for them, and obviously still understand that what you're doing is for the greater good, but understanding that they're in control and working at their speed, I think, is the key to happy, successful trapping.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this adventure. We're really excited about it. And would love to hear what you have to say about TNR or anything you're doing for the animal. We want to hear about your experience. So send us a DM on either Saaving Lives with 2 A's or Travel Animal Rescue on Instagram. See you all next week for our next episode. And in the meantime, stay out of trouble and keep trapping to save the streets one animal at a time.